Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks. In this channel, we generally discuss about public cloud design problem statements and the related solution. Today, we are going to discuss about Azure Data Explorer service. The background is the fundamentals of Azure Data Explorer service. Why do you need Azure Data Explorer service? We need Azure Data Explorer service to analyze high volume of data in near real-time way. It is one of the fully managed, high performance and high data analytics platform which has been provided by Microsoft Azure. Now the use cases. When you want to reduce time to insights with IoT monitoring and analytics, you can prefer this service. And also you have massive amount of data, that means analyze petabytes of log streams in real-time system, then you can use Data Explorer. Also, you want to ingest and analyze petabytes of data from various SaaS applications. There also you can think about this capability or this service. Now, Azure Data Explorer workflow. So there are 4 steps. One is create database, ingest data, query database, and visualize results. When we say create database, that means as a first step, you need to create a cluster in the Azure Data Explorer, and inside the cluster, you can create a database. Second is ingest data. When you create the database, then you have to load the data into it. So you need to load the data into the database tables so that you can run queries against it. And to query the data in the database or to the table, there is a fantastic query language which has been provided by Microsoft, is Kusta query language. With KQL, you can query the data in the real-time fastest way. Then the visualization part. You can visualize the data as an outcome of that query via Azure Data Explorer dashboard. You can use other visualization tools like Power BI and Grafana. So these are all basic workflow steps with Azure Data Explorer. Now, let's think about the security. When we are talking about security, the first part is identity. So as you know, Azure Data Explorer supports both the intra-ID and managed identity concept. So one is system assigned identity, second is user assigned identity. When you are using system assigned identity, that time the intra ID is tied to your cluster and deleted if your cluster is getting deleted. That means a cluster can only have one system assigned managed identity. Second is user assigned identity. User assigned identity, it's a standalone Azure resource that can be assigned to your cluster. And also here in this scenario, a cluster can have multiple user assigned managed identity. Second, the most important and critical part that you have to consider here is single tenant Microsoft Entra resources can only use managed identity to communicate with resources in the same tenant. That means, let you are creating a managed identity and you have tied that managed identity to your Azure Data Explorer, then you can use that identity to authenticate or to authorize another resource. Let's think about Event Hub. Then the Event Hub should be in the same tenant. If your event hub is in another tenant and you have created the Entra ID tenant for the Azure Data Explorer in other tenant, then in that case it will not work. You have to use the other authentication mechanism, I guess key value pair, you have to create it. So this is the most important part. When you are using managed identity, you need to take care of. Then the network security. By default, when you create Azure Data Explorer, it is completely exposed to internet. That means you have to add the network security layer to your Data Explorer if you want to make it much more restricted to your network. So there are 2 solutions which Microsoft has provided. One is private endpoint, second is virtual network injection, that means VNet injection. Private endpoint is the recommended one. Maybe I will try to explain it later on why it has been recommended by Microsoft. Now, Azure Data Explorer with private endpoint. So the most important part here, you can see here, from your virtual network, when you want to realize a connection towards the Azure Data Explorer, which is in the public area, that time Azure provide the private link endpoint concept, where it is a kind of network interface that connects you privately and securely to your cluster powered by Azure Private Link. That means with your private IP, which is there inside your private network, you can, with that private IP, with the concept of private link, you can connect to this Azure Data Explorer, and your traffic will be completely stay within your private network. That is the beauty of Azure private endpoint. Second, Azure Data Explorer VNet injection. That means here inside your virtual network, you will create the Azure Data Explorer service. That means it will be completely inside your virtual network, and it can be completely secure with the concept of network security group, where you can define the inbound and outbound rules, and you can restrict who wants to access your network or who wants to access your particular service which is there inside your network. The only thing that you have to take care is when you are creating the subnet, that time you have to delegate the subnet permission to microsoft.custo/cluster, so that during the runtime Custo can use your network to do the provisioning part, initial provisioning, the bootstrap part. And also the most important part, when you are using virtual network injection, that time you need to make sure you should have a right size of the IP range that is tied to your subnet. Otherwise, as it's going to be a petabyte of analytics activities that you are going to do, then it will not be scaled well. So in that way, you have to make sure you should have the IP range, proper IP range, which you have assigned to your subnet. And also the standard process, that means with your on-premise, you can use the VPN and express route to connect to Azure Data Explorer services, and also the standard process which you follow for your organization to interact with your internet services. So in this way, VNet injection also going to be helpful. Now, the key point, when to use which one, private endpoint versus virtual network injection. So Microsoft always recommend to use private endpoint to connect to your cluster. Why? Because with virtual network injection, it can lead to high maintenance overhead. As I said, like you have to scale it well. That means you have to give the right size to your network so that your ADX can scale well. And also the high maintenance overhead, like such as maintaining FQDN list in your firewall, deploying public IP address in restricted environment, and the most headache part is the FQDN list. That means each time there is a change, you have to modify it accordingly. So this is the extra work that you have to keep maintaining in your virtual network injection. So that's why Microsoft says, why do you want to take that headache? Let Microsoft take the headache, and you completely focus on your environment to use that particular service with private link endpoint. In this way, you are connecting securely, and also you are getting the best out of your Azure Data Explorer service. Now, if you look into the networking part, you can see I just have take this snapshot from Microsoft portal, Microsoft document. You can see here in the Data Explorer, if you go to the networking, there are four sections. One is public access, one is private endpoint connections, another is managed private endpoints, and restrict outbound access. So with public access, you can select from your enable selected IP ranges. You can completely disable your public access, and also you can enable it from your respective networks. With managed private endpoints, you can define which are all secured Azure services, where you can manage. You can use the managed private endpoint concept to interact between Azure Data Explorer and that service. That can be a storage account, can be event of, where Microsoft take care of that endpoint in the Microsoft managed network. So you do not have to worry about it. Whereas private endpoint connection, you have to create your endpoint in your virtual network to get that connection established. And restricted outbound, Microsoft follow a policy concept. Maybe I will try to cover it in the next slide. So you can see here there are two columns. One is private endpoint and virtual network injection. To inbound IP address filtering, you can use the managed private public access, the one that I was showing, and also create your in your virtual network injection. You can have your own NSG rule to restrict the inbound reachability from your inbound IP address. Then the transitive access to your other services like storage, event hub, and others. There you can use a managed private endpoint in case of private endpoint, so that you can establish a secure connectivity from your data explorer to that particular cache service, but in a managed way where you do not have to worry about that endpoint part. Microsoft take care of it, and traffic also remain in the completely private network. And then here with virtual network injection, you have to create a private endpoint to your particular resource where you want to establish the connection from your data explorer. And the most important part, the outbound part, you can use the call out policies where you can define the FQDNs, where which are all FQDNs that you want to reach to from your Azure Data Explorer, and that can be policyfied, where you can define which are all allowed FQDN list can be reachable. And from the virtual network, as I said, like with the NSG rules, you can also filter out your outbound traffic, and also with the help of virtual appliances, you can cover the outbound traffic. So this is all about the basic concept of Azure Data Explorer with identity, networking, and use cases. I have tried to cover all this information by following the Microsoft document. They have really written it really well. I would highly recommend to go through this document. I will share the link in the video descriptions. If you like the video, then don't hesitate to share or like and comment in the video section. Thanks a lot for watching.